I started to realize how much I had to scale back my own thinking about my capacity. So that was, it was emotional and it was physical. Like, it was hard for me to say I can't do this way anymore because I had kept this pace for so long. But it's only now that I know what it feels like to live a life where I have a regulated nervous system that I recognize how badly dysregulated I was for so many years. Hello and welcome to Divergent Paths. I'm your host, Dr. Regina McMenomy. I am a doctor, but not that kind of doctor, and this is a podcast, not medical advice. Today, we're talking about burnout, what it looks like for neurodivergent folk, why it's so much more than just being tired, and why the answer isn't just pushing through. It's learning to rest on purpose. Joining me for this discussion is my longtime friend and host of the DIY for Business podcast, Russ Catanach. So if you've ever hit a wall and wondered why you can't just get it together, this episode is for you. So stay tuned, and thanks for listening to Divergent Paths.
I've said before, like in like running a business, you get to a certain point of like burnout, but we use these terms like burnout, right? And
right. They're very common terms, but like, they're not
you just
always
say it like,
right.
I can't do that today.
So
I'm kind of burnt out,
right.
I'm burnt.
Mm-hmm.
What does it mean? Like, what is it really?
Well, I mean, you can, like, anybody can burn out, or again, anybody can burn out. Generally, what we're talking about in the context of, us for this podcast defining burnout, we're talking about something that goes beyond just being tired. Like, I would say the example you're using, the way you're saying burnout, is the same way as somebody maybe off the cuff saying, oh, well, my OCD or whatever, when they just mean they're like fastidious about something and they're particular. They don't actually mean they have OCD, right?
Right.
And that's not great, because you just should say, I'm picky about this, or I'm fastidious, or I'm, even if you're a germaphobe or a clean freak or something like that. I wouldn't say germaphobe. If you're, focus on cleaning or whatnot, say that instead of saying OCD. I would say the same thing with burnout, because burnout is not just being tired about something. For people with neurodivergence, it's when your nervous system just goes through a complete shutdown that is triggered by how that's being triggered by the mismatch between your environment, like what you're operating in, and your needs as a neurodivergent person. So the length of time you are in, that you're masking, the length of time you end up in a situation or in a space that doesn't support, or you don't feel seen and you can't meet your needs over time, that's what produces burnout. And burnout can get severe enough for people with neurodivergent people, to where your body's physically impacted, and there's stress diseases associated with being at high levels of cortisol, the stress hormone, for long periods of time. And there's a lot of research that backs that people who are undiagnosed in particular end up having those like high level of cortisol and like higher stress, and are more likely to burn out because they're not diagnosed.
You've talked about in other episodes about like hyper focus, right? And I would think, you mentioned sort of the emotional depletion, the fatigue, and those physical symptoms. Is burnout essentially, the result of that hyper focus? Many
Absolutely.
times?
Yeah. And I would say, like, if I was to give one of the like big examples of a prolonged burnout session that I went through, would be finishing my PhD and defending my dissertation. So I put myself on a pretty ambitious schedule. Not a lot of people in my particular discipline finish their PhDs in 5 years, and I finished in 5 years. I didn't want to run out of funding. I probably wouldn't have. I don't think they would have kicked me out necessarily, but I wanted to get on with my life.
Right.
And so I put myself on a pretty ambitious schedule of how I was producing, the chapters of my dissertation. And I definitely worked on it a lot faster than most people around me did. And when I finished and I defended, I went through a bit of a depression from having had like this big project that I was working on for so long. But physically, some interesting symptoms started to creep up, and I ended up going to the doctor and getting tested. And I had high blood sugar. I had extremely,
Mm.
dangerously low vitamin levels. Like my vitamin D. Now I live in the Pacific Northwest, and we struggle with vitamin D
Right.
deficiencies here, just in general.
Yep.
Because of the weather. So that's not that uncommon. But the level I was at for the vitamin D, they put me on these 100,000 IU pills once a week. I would take this excessively high dose. Those were the happiest pills I've ever taken in my entire life. If you don't know, vitamin D is part of what allows you to feel happy.
Interesting. Okay.
And so that's part of where seasonal depression
Mm.
comes from, is people don't have, vitamin D regularly from the sun. And that's part of why seasonal depression happens. But yeah, so I had extremely low vitamin D. I had my B vitamins were all low. I just was I was completely depleted. My physical body was completely depleted, post dissertation, post defense. And that, now I realize I didn't then, I knew I was pushing, because of course I was pushing. I put myself on a very ambitious schedule and I kept it. But I didn't recognize then the toll it was going to take on my body. And it literally the nutrients had been sucked out of my body because I had been
Right.
under so much stress for so long. So,
Right.
yeah.
So once you went through and recognized that it was part of this, did
Mm-hmm.
those I'm particularly going to ask about the blood sugar.
Mm-hmm.
Did that change? Did
Yes.
did just it really?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
And
no
and they
treatment, no change in diet,
I
just
did.
or
No, I
maybe
definitely,
probably a
I
change in
changed my
diet, but
diet a little bit. I didn't change my diet a lot because my diet wasn't bad necessarily. I don't, I avoid a lot of the pitfalls of diabetes because I do have, a family history of diabetes. But so I don't drink soda. Right. And so
right.
I didn't need to cut out a lot of high sugar foods because I didn't have a lot of high sugar foods. But what happens is your cortisol goes up and you become insulin resistant, right? And that's what causes you to have diabetes and to be pre-diabetic. But I have since that time had on my medical record that I had pre-diabetes because the medical industry doesn't believe that it goes away. Once you
Mhm.
have
Right.
once you register high sugar, you are in that category forever. So
Yeah.
a few years later, when I was pregnant, they were just absolutely positive I was going to develop gestational diabetes, which is something that happens when you're
Mhm.
pregnant. Often women will develop gestational diabetes just because of how your body handles being pregnant. Every one of my medical providers was convinced I was going to have gestational diabetes, and I didn't. I never did. I never
Interesting.
developed it because it was that diagnosis was coming out of that heightened stress, and I was actually less stressed out when I was pregnant than
Right.
I was when I was coming out of the burnout of my PhD program and all of the different things that had gone on there. So I didn't get gestational diabetes. I still struggle a little bit. My sugar was high the last time I went to the doctor, so we're still kind of back in this kind of back and forth. But that's for differing reasons. But yeah, those are things. I did sort of exercise a little bit more, and I did start to watch my diet to a degree. But it was really, I think, resting that helped then.
Resting.
Yes.
It sounds so easy, right? But
I mean,
resting is so hard.
resting is
For
so hard.
yeah. Yeah. I mean, I had my company. I worked in that for years,
Mhm.
and that meant working mostly 12-hour days,
Yep.
8 hours on the weekend though. So a
Right?
little break,
Little break on the
each
weekend.
day,
Just doing,
about 8
right.
hours. Yeah.
Because
But,
just because events were just 12 hours, but it was, or 8 hours, you were
yeah,
working
exactly.
12 hours just running the business, but going to the events on the weekend was the break.
Exactly.
Okay.
Right. So, eh, I would love to say that rest is easy, but it's
Yeah,
not,
it's not.
right? Like it's
Mm-mm.
not like just, oh, here's the magic cure, just take a break.
Right.
Because even when you're sitting there,
Right.
you're physically sitting there, but your
Right.
mind is still spinning, your mind is
Right.
still working, and your mind, you're
Exactly.
still thinking about those
Hmm.
things. Like I've sort of had to train myself to not dream about work. You know, like literally, like I'll wake up some
Sure.
nights, I'll dream about work, and it's like, no, I can't have this dream. I need to,
Right.
like, I'll wake up in the middle of the night in the dream and tell myself to stop having the dream, like, and
Yes.
try to think about something else. And
I
usually it works for me.
I did
But
that this morning too.
oh, seriously?
Yeah, I woke up. So, you know, I'm in the middle of planning a very big event for the theater that I'm on the
Right.
board for, and the event is in 2 days, 3 days. It's on Friday. Anyway, so it's this week is the event, and I woke up dreaming. I woke up from a dream. I was dreaming about the event, and I just woke up and I was like, "You are not. No, that your work is done. Things are set. You are in good shape. You don't need to be stressing about this." And I kind of had this like little
Hmm.
pep talk with myself around 3 o'clock this morning, going,
Nice.
"You're going to be," and telling myself like some of this, like, you know, but burnout isn't a failure. Like a lot of us feel like when we get to this point, when we have pushed ourselves, at least I felt this way. I felt like I was failing when I burned out, like,
Mm,
because I felt like I needed to always keep up this like really high, intense pace. And that's not, it's not doable. Like you can't keep up that kind of pace. Nobody can keep up some of the paces I have tried to keep in my life.
mhm. Right.
And this is a nervous system. This is your nervous system responding to the stress. Like it wasn't my body's fault that it had depleted my vitamin D, right? Like
Right.
that was not my body's fault. It wasn't even my brain's fault. It wasn't even my emotional fault, right? It was
Right.
just how I didn't understand. I didn't understand myself. I didn't understand who I was. It's not like my mindset was wrong. It was that I didn't know how to pace,
Right.
right?
I like that you're saying the pace thing, because it makes me think of, an athlete, a
Mhm.
runner, right?
Right.
Running
Yeah.
running the
You burn
800.
yourself
You've
out.
got you've got
Mhm.
4 laps, and if you put too much in the first lap, those last 3 are going to suck. You're not going to hit
Exactly.
your time,
Yep.
right? So it's like learning how to pace. Now, for a runner that's difficult, right?
Right.
And in life that can be
Right.
difficult. Like,
Yeah.
what have you identified as ways that can maybe help you figure out a pace? Do you what have you done for yourself in that?
Um I think the biggest thing I've done is learn my capacity. So one of the things that in my career was draining. So now when I'm talking about working on my dissertation, the majority of people who do the kind of dissertation program that I do, they work at the school that they're getting their degree from, right? They have a teaching assistantship or a grad assistantship where you're doing some work for the university and they're paying your tuition.
Hmm.
And I had that. I had a teaching assistantship. So I was teaching as I was finishing it. But I didn't only teach there. So I continued to teach for the community college I had left that I had been teaching at before. I continued to teach online for them after I went to my PhD program. So I was teaching most of my classmates were teaching 1 or 2 classes a semester, and I was teaching
Mm.
5 or 6 classes with 25 to 35 students in it, like you do the math.
Right.
And I did not slow down that pace when I graduated. I took on
Right.
another school. I took on another set of students, and I took on another, a completely in addition job to that. So I ended up teaching at the school I graduated from, the community college I had been teaching at since I started teaching, and another school in addition. So then I had 3 schools. And for 5 years after I finished this, because I didn't understand I was burnt out when I finished my dissertation, right?
Mm.
I was just
Right.
like, okay, this took a lot out of me because this was such a big thing. So I just pushed right back into a very similar schedule and burned myself
Mhm.
right back out again, because in the 5 years after I finished my dissertation, that teaching schedule allowed me 1 week a year where I wasn't teaching. And that week was the week between Christmas and New Year's. And that's not a break
No.
at all. There is no rest when you
Yeah.
have the week between Christmas and New Year's off.
Right.
Especially
Right.
when you have a small child. Like, no.
Exactly. Yeah.
So
That is
I
not a
didn't,
rest period.
yeah, I didn't learn that then. So now I know I can't work like that. Like, once I got through my diagnosis, once I started to realize that I needed to regulate my nervous system in order to regulate my emotions, in order to be a calm and productive person, I started to realize how much I had to scale back my own thinking about my capacity. So that was, a big, it was emotional and it was physical. Like, it was hard for me to say I can't do this way anymore because I had
Mhm.
kept this pace for so long. But it's only now that I know what it feels like to live a life where I have a regulated nervous system that I recognize how badly dysregulated I was for so many years.
Right. Right. Well, at so, uh, something hard to learn is that, like, rest is
Hmm.
productive,
Right. Rest is productive. That if,
right?
if
And
there's any main message I would like to come out of today, you
right.
are not lazy. You are not like it. Resting does not mean you are not doing something. Rest is something that you need. It is productive for your body to rest. Yes.
Right. Well, okay. So I'm going to throw that at you, but then I want to flip it around on you just because, I like to do
That's what
that.
you do.
So rest is productive, but then what about too much rest? Now you're just passing on things. You're not like doing the responsibilities. You're like, I don't know. Let's say you had a pile of dishes. There you
Hmm.
go. I already brought it up.
You already did it.
And you're like, "Oh, I'm gonna take a break before I do that because I've done too much today." And then you just never get to it. Like,
Yeah,
how do you there's a balancing act there too. And
there is. Yeah.
how do you handle that? The balancing act of rest versus getting back in and, too much rest versus too little.
Right. Well, I curse out past Regina on a regular basis. And I have chosen not to do the dishes after dinner or whatnot, and I have to go the next morning and I don't have the dishes ready I need to make breakfast. I'm like, God damn it, Regina.
Right.
Past Regina, why? And then I stop myself, because that is often my train of thinking, is to admonish her and remind myself that I was tired and I was depleted at that time. And I could have pushed through and done the dishes, but it was more important for me to rest at that time. And I just tried to very gently remind myself that I wasn't being lazy and I didn't do it because I wanted to punish future Regina. I did it because that was the needs of my body at that time. And part of what I've had to do, I've gone through a really significant restructuring of my life in the last year or so, where I'm trying to change how I manage a lot of different things in my life, from dishes and housework to how I cook for myself, and changing my expectations of what I can do. So I have a hard time fixing breakfast for myself when I have to dirty dishes up. I love to eat oatmeal for breakfast, but I don't like to leave my kitchen dirty after breakfast. I don't like pots and pans for breakfast. And this doesn't always work out. But one of the accommodations I have done, and I will just like to acknowledge that this does take privilege and the financial ability to do this, is I look at some things that would be called convenience foods as part of my keeping myself regulated. So on the mornings when I haven't done the dishes and I can't make scrambled eggs or whatnot because my frying pan is dirty, I have cups of oatmeal that I can make, and I have to order them online because they never have non-sugared cups of oatmeal in the grocery store. They only have like
Mm,
sweetened ones, and
right.
a bunch of added sugar in my oatmeal.
Right.
I just want oatmeal that I can add. If I want to add a little sweetener to it, I can add a little honey or a little maple syrup or whatever. I don't want something that comes pre-sweetened. So I have to order them online. They are not cheap, but that is an accommodation I put in place for myself, because that is a breakfast I can make, and all I dirty up is the spoon that I eat. So I know on the morning when I haven't done the dishes from the night before, I have a breakfast, a healthy, sustainable breakfast that's good, have high protein in it and things like that, that do all of the things I really need my breakfast to do for my body and my nervous system. And I don't have to worry about the fact that I didn't get the dishes done
Right.
from the night before. And that is the accommodation. And that is recognizing. And it's hard. Like, I look at those cups and I'm like, they're so expensive. And I just think about how, and of course, things are more expensive right now than they have been ever in our life before, right? And
Right.
continue to get that way. And
Uh,
I'm constantly in this, like, I'm trying to learn not to berate myself over how expensive some of my accommodations are. And that this is one, like I said, that goes to, I needed the rest the night before, so the next day I have the easy breakfast, right? And those are pieces that I have to put into place, both in that I have to make sure to keep a stock of that. Like, I have to make sure that I have them, at the ready when I need them. And I don't generally think about whether or not I have them when I make the choice not to do the dishes, because a lot of times I just don't even think about doing the dishes when I need the rest now. Like, now I just, like, it's time to sit down and watch a show. My daughter and I are watching Young Sheldon together, and we'll sit down and watch 2 or 3 episodes of that, and spending that time with her, which is both recuperative time and good bonding time for us, is the priority over getting the dishes
mhm.
done the night before.
The other thing, aside from the break, is also breaking up work, right?
Right.
Like,
Yes. Chunking
um,
things. Yeah.
yeah. So like,
Hmm.
doing, work windows, but also like, I guess just making the right decision on what to do, right? Like I always
Hmm.
think of actually just at the company I'm at, we just uh did a conference. It's about Claris FileMaker. It's like a database conference thing that we did down in Austin. And what was really cool was one of our speakers from our company actually did something on mastering time, is what she called
Oh,
it.
nice.
Which was, let's see, let me get her title correctly here, because want to respect Allison, but maximizing business efficiency and well-being. And I thought
Ah,
that was so cool. And some
nice.
of the things she
Yes.
talked about, like she mentioned, like the Eisenhower method of project management was one of the things that she had,
Mm,
talked about, of like, do I is it urgent and important? So I do it now,
right.
right?
Yeah.
If it's not urgent but important, decide or schedule a time to do it. And then not important but urgent, can I delegate it? And then not urgent, not important, just delete it.
Right.
And it's
Is that
like,
the Eisenhower Square, right? Is that what that's
yeah, it's the
called?
little square thing.
Yes.
And
Well,
it's, I believe
somebody
it's,
I interviewed is talked about that. She was big.
yeah.
One of the the Sam Rockwell episodes. She talked about Eisenhower Squares being the life-changing organization that she used.
Yeah, and it's
Yeah.
something that when you're doing those little 3-hour segments or 4-hour segments of
Hmm.
work, so that you're not doing the full 8-hour, like, oh, this is my
Yeah.
day. I'm going to be
Yep.
sitting here for, until 5 o'clock today. I'm going to be sitting in this chair.
Right.
Like if you can make those little, decisions like that, and put
Hmm.
it into a
Yep.
matrix like that, it can be, very helpful.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and there's software out there. Actually, she made an example software. I can send you a link too.
Yeah.
We'll throw it in there. But there's
Yeah.
like software out there to help with that.
Hmm.
The other one that I think about is the Pomodoro
The
timers,
Pomodoro method. Yeah. Yeah. The Pomodoro
right?
method
Like,
was how I got through my dissertation. Like, that's what helped me write my dissertation.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's very helpful as
Yeah.
well.
25 minutes on, 5 minutes off. Sometimes that doesn't work all that well with neurodivergence
Right,
because
right.
interrupting hyperfocus can be hard. Um,
Hmm.
and but I think it would also, I think the reason why it helped when I was working on my dissertation was because I was allowing myself to rest in those 5 minutes, because that's one of the really important things in the Pomodoro methodology is taking time. Like, you take those 5 minutes and you goof off,
Yeah.
and it does help, especially if you're doing mundane tasks. Like, a lot of my dissertation was, data analysis, which wasn't the fun. You know what the fun part of my dissertation was? That's why I got into
What's that?
podcasting, talking to people. Like,
Right.
the interviews was the fun part. That's why I
Yeah.
started the pod. That's why I started Game on Girls, because I wanted to keep talking to people. Like, that's
Right.
why we're doing this podcast, because I want to keep talking to you and to other, late diagnosed neurodivergent people, or not late diagnosed neurodivergent people, to talk about, your process and how work works for you and things like that.
Hmm.
Like,
Hmm.
that is very dopamine producing stuff for me.
Right.
Right. Whereas the data entry and the data analysis that I was going through once I had all of my interviews done, that was the stuff I had to chunk up into time. And I think I realized even then, an 8-hour workday doesn't work for me, and I cannot work 9 to 5. I cannot. It just does not work for me. I can't work that schedule. If I want to burn out, I get a 9 to 5 job. Like, I will 100% burn out. My nervous system will crash. And not in very long of time. Like, it does not take long in a 9 to 5, especially if somebody is monitoring and, wanting to not make sure that I'm doing the work, but literally that I'm sitting at a desk the hours they want me to. Nothing will cause me to be less productive than someone trying to manage my time like that. Because even now, there will be times when I generally work, 10 to 3 every day. I have this pretty solid window. The 10 to 3 are my hours that I work, and I get a lot done every day in that time frame. And usually I'm picking up my daughter at 3 or whatever. My day gets disrupted around that time in the afternoon, no matter what. And then I will come back. Some days I come back, and if the hyperfocus has been able to perpetuate, I will come back after I pick my daughter up, and I will continue to work for an hour or two. Some days I don't. Some days I have to come back and either go for a walk, or I have to do other things, or I do the dishes. And I do the other things that need to get done. But I know I have that window. And then a lot of times I will work at 9 or 10 o'clock at night, and I will work for a
Yeah.
couple of hours, like,
Yeah.
because it's quiet, because if I have that, I just read an article that was saying ADHD brains in particular, like all of the advice around sleep doesn't work for somebody really with ADHD, because especially if you're unmedicated, you don't ease off into sleep. You just run out of gas, and then you hit the wall and you crash. And so ADHD brains falling asleep looks more like passing out than like easing into sleep. Like, you just run up against the wall and you're down. Like, that's
Hmm.
it. Which also, unfortunately, is part of what I think leads to burnout, because like, you're not learning how to like ease into that state. You just hit it.
Right.
So
Right.
so sometimes evenings I'll be still too wired up to be able to fall asleep at a normal hour.
It's sort of in a way, like your system, your body
Mhm.
is like telling you it's done.
Yeah. Yep.
It's over. This is your
Yeah.
end of your day.
Yeah.
Now, that can happen though several times during the day, right? Like, I
Mhm.
mean, I get that. Like, going back to that triangle or the square, of like putting stuff into these various things.
Yeah.
Like, it's so often that the decide stuff, right? The not urgent but important stuff
Mhm.
is something like that data entry thing that you were talking about
Yes.
earlier, that boring stuff,
Exactly.
right?
Yeah. The
I
stuff that
almost
has to get done. Yeah, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and I almost feel
Yeah.
like chunking that down even further and then giving
Mhm.
yourself, like, do some of the other stuff, the fun stuff as
Exactly.
well, so
Mhm.
that you're doing a little bit of each as you're going, or else
Yeah.
it's
And
just gonna
that's
be
yeah.
impossible to, get through
That's
that
something
list.
that I have employed recently, where I will do a small dopamine producing task. For whatever reason, my daughter and her friends are all into Duolingo right now. Duolingo
Okay.
is like the thing that they are all doing, all of them.
Okay.
And
Cool.
I'm 100% here for it. We'll support it. Yes, this is great. But she got me on it too, and so I've been doing it as well. And so a lot of times I'll go in and I'll do a quick lesson, because especially the music lessons I find really pleasurable to do and really enjoyable to do because I already know how to play piano. So like doing those are like I do really well on those.
Nice.
And it's really
Nice.
fast for me and I can go in and like,
Hmm.
go through the lessons. I already know how to read music and I skipped like the first 2 units pretty much and just like, got into the, further along. But um I'll do that. Like if I have a phone call to make and I don't want to make the phone call, I will do a couple lessons of Duolingo and get like my streak and get my rewards and finish my quests or whatever, my daily quests. And then I'm now charged my brain with some dopamine and then I
Right.
can make the phone call, right? So
Right.
like I tricked myself, but I have to hold myself to it though, right? I have to get the little bit of dopamine and then not be like, "Oh, let me go do something else fun," and have to go, "Nope, that dopamine is for this task,"
Right.
and then go do the
Right.
thing I don't want to do. So,
Yeah, I sort of, I mean, I like making sales calls, right? Like when I was doing radio sales
mhm.
was, it's, it's the worst. You're
Yeah.
basically doing cold calling. Now I was,
Yep.
working for CBS, so I got to say, this is Russ calling from CBS and say it all important. And they're like, oh shoot, I'm going to
Ooh,
be like,
right.
like, what is happening to me?
What is this? Oh my god,
You know,
yeah. Yeah.
like, yeah.
Yep.
So it helped, that
Mhm.
I had that, but still making sales
Yeah.
calls sucked. And
Yep.
it's like the dopamine, I guess, came from, getting an appointment, getting something set
Yep.
up.
Exactly.
And
Yeah,
so for
being successful.
me, the, digging through those and getting past, like, I literally, I used to keep up a little chalk, like a little chalkboard or whatever of like
Yeah,
all the no's
tallies.
I would get. So I
Mhm.
would count only the no's, not the yeses. And then I knew like, oh, I had 15 no's today, which means that yes is getting closer.
Right, right.
So it was
Your
like
your
I reverse
statistical
engineered it,
probabilities. Yeah.
like
Yeah.
to make it where this could actually be good.
Right. Yeah.
So yeah,
This
I
could
mean,
actually
it's, I
help.
don't know,
Yeah.
bunch of little
Yeah.
tricks that you try to learn, and
Yeah. Yeah.
nobody knows what's going to work for the each individual, but it's like
Yeah.
it's just trying these different things and
Yeah, and it's
figuring it all
important to
out.
recognize that rest doesn't look the same for everybody. Like, a rest day doesn't have to just mean you sat on your couch and were a couch potato. If you need that, if that's what your
Yeah,
body needs, then respect that's what your body needs. But like, so that's like passively resting if you want to sit and watch TV. But you could also have like your hobbies and things. Those are,
totally. Yeah,
that's rest as well. Walking, getting out and being active.
right.
I love days like I only started doing this recently when I did get a full-time job. I went, I taught, like I said, I taught multiple schools, as an adjunct for 20 years. And I never had a like really set schedule. So I would work on the weekends a lot of the time. And when I finally got a 9 to 5 job, I it wasn't a 9 to 5 job. When I finally got a full-time job, I started not working on the weekends for the first time in 20 years. And I used to go into a cold panic on Sunday nights, thinking that I had done something
Mm,
wrong by taking a couple of days of not working and
right.
had to really teach myself that it was okay. Like nothing was going to burn down. Nothing was like, and if anything was on fire, I would have heard about it. Like somebody would have gotten a hold of me. So like I wasn't going to be in trouble going back to work on Monday, not having worked Saturday and Sunday. So teaching myself to
Hmm.
take that time and to not use my weekends for catch up and not use my weekends for just doing stuff, but making sure I got some of those, pleasurable stuff in the things that I liked to do, that I didn't let that fall by the wayside, because
Yeah,
that's also part of what led to me burning out when
right.
I was, doing my dissertation and when I was working and teaching the way that I was because I didn't build in time for me to have game days with my friends and like do the things that are important things for me to do. And
Yeah,
that's one of the things we want to make sure we're getting lots of different types of rest in. It's really important for me to have time to go to counseling. Like counseling is really important to me, and that helps me not burn out as well. So keeping in mind that it doesn't always look like, taking a nap. Resting isn't just taking a nap.
right. Right. And now let's on the business front, right? Like
Hmm.
for a company, there's, rest time might look like non-productive time,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
How do you, if you're like, let's say, you're taking this 5-10 minute rest break in the
Right.
middle of the day, but
Right.
your boss comes up to you and says, what are you doing? Like, get back to work.
Right.
Like, how would you deal with something like that?
Well, let's think about it this way. Would you be disappointed in your car when it needed gas?
Mm,
Are you
good
going to be mad
analogy.
at your car because you need to go to the gas station? I mean, you might be mad
Right.
that it's an inconvenient time that it needs
Yeah.
gas, but you're not mad at it because it needs gas to go, right?
Right. Right.
So,
Hmm.
there are times where it may look like your employees are not working or not being productive. But if they are out of gas and they are, like I used to do this, I used to play like 2-minute phone games. Again, cheap dopamine. I'd get myself going again. I could get back into work after.
Hmm.
When I worked years and years ago, when I worked at IBM and I'd have that slump at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, I'd get up and have a candy bar. I had the metabolism for it then. I don't
Yeah.
now, but I did then.
Yeah.
And that would be what would get me through that last part of the day,
Hmm.
what I would get that sugar, and the sugar would be part of what like got me into the being able to make it through the rest of the day. Um, you know,
Right.
it
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
fuel, right?
Right. Yeah, you need that. Which, by the
Mhm.
way, I drive an electric car, so if it needed gas, I would have a little problem
You
with
would
that.
be in
But
right, yes. But
did
you
you
still
even
need
take that
fuel.
longer to take that,
Right.
that analogy,
Yes.
turning it to the electric car? I know that I got to sit there in the parking lot for 35 minutes to charge the car, but I know that's going to get me another 250, 300 miles. And
Exactly, and that's what your
that's
employees are doing too, like,
right.
they're getting you the next 2 or 3 hours of work by taking the rest when they need it, and even if it's like,
Exactly.
I needed to get outside with the last, down the road, I will do the episode about what happened at the last job that I took. That is coming up on.
That's going to be a pay-per-view, actually.
That's
That
gonna
one's going
be
to
a
be good.
big
Yeah.
episode, and we're kind of leading into it in some parts and talking about, like, these other components because they all kind of
Hmm.
led into that story. But I would get up from that job and go sit 5 minutes outside almost every hour because I just could not handle. My office was dark. I couldn't handle the fluorescent lights. Wasn't in a space that I could accommodate with lights that would work better for me. I like everything was bad. Like
Right.
stick a fork in me, I'm done. Like there were so many little pricks and, sensory things that were a problem for me that I needed that regular, like to get even half an hour of work done in that space. I needed that 5 minutes out of it.
Right.
And, and my boss in that situation did not look on that as me filling up the gas tank.
Right.
It was just me not working. And that was, you know, all part of the problem. But, sometimes it looks different. Sometimes it needs to be
Yeah.
often. Sometimes it isn't you take a 5-minute break and you get 3 more hours of work. Sometimes it's you take a 5 or 10-minute break and you get another half an hour of work. And
Yeah.
what would you rather have, them not fuel up and not get that half an hour of work, or them take the time
Hmm.
to know themselves, to recognize, that they need what they need in order to produce the way that you want them
Right.
to. So,
Right.
rest is not counterproductive. Rest is productive. Rest is important. And it shouldn't be a reward. And I think a lot of management systems look at rest as a reward, like you earned your vacation. It shouldn't be I earned my vacation. It should be I need to be well rested to
Right.
work well and to be healthy. And
Hmm.
that's what our focus should be.
Right. Right. And as far as like the accommodations, like I've seen it where you know people don't want like managers that don't want headphones in because you're listening
Right.
to music, which is distracting. Well, no, that's maybe distracting to you, but
Right. But
it's
not to them.
helpful to me. It
Right.
helps me to focus. So
Yep.
it's also
Yep.
just, yeah, learning
Mhm.
what you need yourself, but also what
Right.
the people that are, reporting to you, working with you,
Right.
what they need. And
Yeah, some of my writing students loved to have headphones in when they needed to write in my class, and I I couldn't do that. I can't listen to words I can't listen to music with words and write because I automatically start transcribing and things don't make any sense. Like, how did that
You
word
know,
get in that sentence?
the crazy thing about me is like
Many.
I could throw on a baseball game, let's say, in the background, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, people coming by, they'll like, oh, this guy's listening to a baseball game. It has now made it where for some reason the whole world has disappeared and I'm actually focused on what I'm writing. The
Mm-hmm.
game is like, there's no way I could tell you what happened, who
How very
won, who
ADHD of
hit,
you.
or whatever. But
Uh-huh.
like it just helps me to focus. I mean, one of the things too is like like I've got the tendonitis thing or whatever it's called. What tinnitus,
Tinnitus. Yeah.
not tendonitis. I probably have that too, but the
Yeah.
tinnitus thing where you get the little ringing thing, and that's more distracting to me than
So
having a
having the
baseball
noise.
game or
Yeah.
something in the background. If I don't have noise in the background, it's like it's harder for me to focus because I like
Right.
the ringing thing bugs me too.
And for neurodivergent brains that are primed to take in more information than neurotypical brains, like that's the difference. Like neurodivergent brains are taking in so much more information in their environment that what's happening in part when you're having that noise, it, it's taking up part of that information taking in system and allows you to
Mm-hmm.
focus on what you're doing because you're working to in some ways to tune it out. So part of your brain is like over here working on listening to the game, even if you're not remembering it. Still part of your
Right.
brain is doing that work over there, and your I don't know, primary
Right.
conscious is allowed to focus on what you're doing, but you're
Mm-hmm.
keeping part of your brain occupied. That's one of the reasons why for me, like sleep meditations work really well because I like when I lay down to sleep, if I don't have something going, like with this gala that's coming up, with this event that I'm planning that's coming up, I will start spinning about maybe what I need to do. Like I know I'm not going to sleep really well the night before the gala because I know I'm not going to sleep well the night before the gala because I'm just always my brain's going to be spinning on what the next
Yep.
day is going to be.
Right.
So like having a sleep meditation or something like that will help keep that part of my brain occupied so I can get some fall asleep.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
but it's the same thing. You're doing the same thing. You're just using up some of that extra
Right.
processing.
Exactly. So okay. So we've that'll be another pay-per-view, by the way,
Right.
of us
Yeah.
figuring out
When Russ
what's
gets
my deal.
diagnosed. Yeah.
Okay, so all of these things, like particularly these last couple of questions, have focused on the business front.
Mm-hmm.
It's great, like we give great advice on this
Yep.
show, but
Yep.
specifically on this business side, you know, it's like we do over on the DIY for business show. We talk about things, and some of it is DIY and some of it is get somebody in there. You're one of those
Right.
people that can go in there, help to
Yeah.
look at this, help to understand it with the business. So tell
Mm-hmm.
us a little bit more about that and how somebody would reach out to you if they wanted to engage your services.
Yeah, please check out my website, or we're talking about the offerings. I have, detailed offerings for what I can do for your business. Really what I think my strength is I have a lot of experience in systems thinking, right? I can really come in and see how your culture is impacting your workflow and your productivity. And that comes from my years, not just as a teacher and constantly changing cultures. And every class that I ever taught had its own culture and its own life. So coming in and being able to look at your business and see where maybe some of your pitfalls are, maybe there are things that are getting in the way, some really simple things that you might be able to change to drive productivity and help support your employees. So I'm going to be offering in the near future kind of a culture checkup where I can just come in and do a really quick consult where you'd fill out a survey, and then I'd look at the survey results and talk to you about it and give you kind of a checkup and to see like what are some quick things we can do to change and modify our culture to better support not just neurodivergent employees, but all employees. Thank you so much for listening. Burnout isn't a personal failure. It's your nervous system asking, sometimes begging, for a different way to live. So take the nap, cancel the thing, leave the dishes. Rest is not the reward for surviving. It's the strategy for thriving. Thanks for tuning in to Divergent Paths. If this discussion resonated with you, share it with someone who needs permission to pause. And don't forget to tag me at Divergent Paths Consulting. Until next time, stay grounded and unapologetically unproductive when you need to be.